Hi folks, my name is Ryan O'Neill. I am the Climate Sales Director at Schneider Electric Energy and Sustainability Services. And today we have convened a group of Schneider's sustainability and climate action experts to discuss some of the implications of the IPCC report, which was released on August 9th. And in this report, which the UN has in fact described as a code red for humanity, scientists have warned about faster global warming and regional changes that are causing irreversible damage and extreme weather events. And so we're here today to help our clients and the business community at large to translate what this means for their path forward. And I'm going to start with Stephanie. Stephanie is a sustainability consultant with her business. So Stephanie, how have you seen these impacts affecting companies today, and what does this mean for their climate goals?
Yeah, Ryan, I think the timing is very interesting, right? This report has been released right now at a time when many regions around the world are feeling really intensified impacts of climate change. So we have seen that recent extreme weather events, they have threatened not only companies around the world, but also communities in very dramatic ways. So most recently in the US, in the beginning of the year, we saw, for example, a polar event in Texas, energy crisis that followed it. We also saw fires in California that caused many blackouts. And here in Germany, more recently, we saw unprecedented and catastrophic flooding. So of course, those are only a few examples among many other examples of events that are affecting many regions across the world. And of course, that mitigating these effects of climate change will require us to move very fast and rapidly reduce greenhouse gases emissions. In this sense, I believe that business do have a critical role to play when it comes to meeting global net zero ambitions, limiting warming to 1.5 degrees. And of course, we know that those targets, so corporate net zero, carbon neutrality commitments, they're critical for the future of our climate. And the report also says that the current trajectory of emissions reductions based on today's commitments is still not nearly aggressive enough to avoid warming past 1.5 degree threshold. So this means that business that have goals, they will need to stop and evaluate whether those goals are really based on what science dictates is needed to mitigate the worst effects of climate change. And if not, they will need to adjust them accordingly. And on the other hand, business that do not have those goals, they will need to come to terms with the fact that if all industries do not act and contribute to reducing emissions as fast and as much as possible by mid-century, economic performance and business viability will suffer.
That's great. Thanks, Stephanie. I think it's very true that all companies need to step up on their commitments, even the most ambitious companies, if the world is to truly have an impact in terms of changing the course of climate change. In light of this report, many companies may be wondering what they can do today to make a difference. So, and that's in addition to setting some ambitious long-term goals. So I'd like to ask Emily from our Global Strategic Renewables team to weigh in here. So Emily, what recommendations do you have for near-term changes that companies can initiate today?
Yeah, thanks Ryan, and hi everyone. Yeah, and I'm happy to share some really positive insight here. And to start, accelerating the transition from coal to fossil-free power or clean power by switching to renewable energy is today one of the most accessible ways for companies to reduce their CO2 emissions while also transitioning the collective grid to renewable energy. And this transition is happening right now. A few weeks ago, the US government's EIA department just released a report that revealed that in 2020, renewable energy here in the US became the second most prevalent electricity source, surpassing coal for the very first time on record, which is huge news. And in part, that is really due to all of the US corporate action being taken here to transition to renewable energy. And so now here in the US, we are at 21% renewable here on the grid, while coal is now below at 19%, and that will continue to go down as corporates and other utilities begin to transition to renewable energy. So to answer your question about how companies can take immediate action right now, I'm going to share 3 primary ways that companies can do this right now. And the first way is with renewable energy power purchase agreements, or PPAs. And while this process can take several months to over a year to vet and complete, your team's effort towards a PPA is worth it, because a PPA means that you are directly responsible for adding new utility scale wind and solar to the grid. And a PPA is also one of the most cost-effective ways globally to procure renewables for corporates. Now, the second thing companies can do right now is to invest in highly credible carbon offsets. And I stress the highly credible part. But carbon offsets do remove CO2 from the atmosphere, while also enabling you to reduce your direct emissions, meaning your operational emissions for the short term, while you develop a longer term strategy to ramp up to achieving true net zero. And then the third thing that companies can do right now is to engage your supply chain on decarbonization. And developing a plan to engage your value chain partners can seem like a very daunting process at first, right? Especially if you have hundreds or even thousands of suppliers. But really taking that time to educate and support and or partner with your value chain on their own renewable energy deployment is, number one, how you drive real lasting action amongst your supply chain, and also how you truly scale the reach of your company's sustainability impact. And what this also achieves is credibility and transparency, which is what all stakeholders today are looking for.
Oh, that's brilliant, Emily. Thank you for that insight. I think that really underscores that there are many actions that a company can in fact take today to accelerate their emissions reduction journey. So I think if we move away from the near term and look more towards the long term, and in the long term, addressing climate change will require businesses to transform the way they work towards models that will allow them to thrive in a low carbon world. So what we're saying here is that the strategies and tactics that has brought business success in a carbon-based economy will not necessarily work in the future. And that's especially in the face of increasing climate change risk. So for this, I'd like to bring in Lindsay, who's a sustainability consultant within our business. So Lindsay, how should organizations think about evolving their business to remain relevant? How can they address climate risk and meet the needs of customers in the future?
Thanks, Ryan. So as Stefania already mentioned, we know that climate-related risks are present. They're already here this year, previous years, and they're growing with their intensity and their frequency, right? And so they have become a significant threat to much of the economy, our companies, businesses, but also our communities and the people that reside within them. And the pandemic that has recently affected everyone has really hit fast forward on many of the transition risks. And when I say transition risks, I mean those risks that are emerging as companies, as we are all transitioning to a low carbon economy. And so the pandemic had put companies under pressure to map out their climate-related risks and start to build a proactive response to not just mitigate or lessen the risks that exist today or are starting to emerge, but also to adapt and secure their license to operate, not just now, but in the future, and to start to build in that resiliency. So companies, how do they do that, right? They can adapt through a combination of digital and sustainable transformations. On the digital side, technology has revolutionized the way that we work together. Even just the past year and a half, we've identified and excelled in new ways of working together, which has been amazing. And it has also revolutionized the way that we live together. But the next step is also revolutionizing the way that we live within our environment. If our environment is changing around us, the way that we live in it, the way that we interact with it also needs to change. So how do we do that? Using IoT to connect every asset in your business to big data. Digitization provides an untapped pathway to sustainability and is a major tool in cutting your scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. The introduction of artificial intelligence also allows your business to get more value of the data that you produce, that you already have, and provides an even more accurate and efficient analysis as the foundation of your sustainability strategy. So having a mind plus machine approach improves the insights and analysis of a company's energy and sustainability portfolio, which can drive more efficient value and even bottom line impact in pursuit of climate change resilience and other resource and emissions reduction targets that you might already be using today as a tool to help you achieve that climate resilience that you're looking for to have that license to operate in the future, right? So I said digital and sustainable transformation. So what are sustainable transformations? We've seen so many purpose-driven businesses pop up, but also traditional businesses defining their purpose, right? They've already had it, but communicating it clearly and with intent. And to thrive in a world with increased demands for transparency, equality, and social and environmental responsibility, companies can only continue to maximize their value by creating shared value for everyone. And at the heart of this is re-envisioning the purpose of your company. Purpose-driven corporations find themselves better positioned than other companies to access and utilize tools that bolster resilience and operational viability in the long run. When doing this well, embedding sustainability into your business strategy enables organizations to deliver better results for all your stakeholders, your shareholders, communities, and by acting in the best interest of everyone to promote social and environmental equity, it helps to deliver higher and more sustainable returns to your shareholders over time. I'd also say that building values of the circular economy from end to end, from design to end use of the life of your products helps businesses innovate, utilize fewer resources and materials, and to drive greater value from the resources that you are using today. Circular business models also help to drive competitiveness by identifying cost savings and resilience, improving engagement with the supply chain and customers. That's so very important. And helping act on climate change commitments by reducing your Scope 3 emissions, which if you've already quantified your Scope 3 emissions, you know is one of the largest sources and also more challenging ones to get under control or to tackle. So you really have to have an agenda for sustainability and digitization that's core to your company's purpose so that you can continue to drive long-term value and combat climate change.
Oh, that's great, Lindsay. Thank you very much for that. And in fact, thank you to all of our guests today. Thank you, Stefania and Emily, for your fantastic insights and recommendations. Much appreciated. Just to move on and to wrap up, with COP26 just a few months away, this latest IPCC report really underscores the need for leaders to negotiate bolder commitments around mitigation, adaptation, sustainable finance, and global collaboration. Now, we fully appreciate and understand that mobilizing a business to act swiftly around the IPCC's latest science is not a simple task at all. But the great news that you heard today is that there are tools and best practices available to support you. So with the right partners and experts on your side, you can break down the climate journey into an actionable roadmap to make a clear path for your business to reach even the most ambitious goals. And so as you've heard from the speakers today, it takes innovation and willingness to disrupt the challenge the norm to bring real change to your operations and industry at large. So it's no longer about the discussion on sustainability or climate change. Now is the time to be bold, and now is the time to act. Thank you.